Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Selects. Here are my tips and predictions for round 24. Now, just straight off the bat, I am recording these vocals on my phone because my microphone's having a bit of technical difficulty, so apologies in advance if the vocals are a bit muffled. Now, before we get into this week's video, I do, as always, just want to plug our free Discord server. It's the best place to chat footy, talk about punts, have a bit of a laugh, all that good stuff. And obviously, it is completely free of charge. You can join by scanning that QR code shown on screen or hitting the link in the video description. Now, if we talk a bit of footy, last week we tipped 6 out of 8 games. I do feel a wee bit hard done by with the Broncos and Storm. Obviously, losing Walsh and Reynolds in the same 20th minute is ridiculous, and we didn't really get to see how that game played out. I thought the Broncos were up for it early and looked happy to be in the grind and wrestle with the Storm, but obviously it wasn't to be. And then Latrell Mitchell came back to lead his side away from the wooden spoon in Indigenous round. You obviously never bet against Latrell Mitt in Indigenous round. So yeah, full credit to the Bunnies. It's a pretty important win in the context of their season, which sounds crazy to say. That does leave us at just shy of 60% for the year, which is certainly not where we want to be. And while I haven't been having the best rounds, I'll show you someone who has. And that person is Jordan Hill, who pulled off a perfect week last week to give himself a 3-point buffer atop the ladder with only 4 weeks to go. Huge clutch week for you, Jordan. I certainly don't think you're home and hosed yet, but it will go a long way in determining the top 3 order. Still plenty of people on that screen in play for the top 3 and those, free prizes. So good luck to everyone shown on screen. Here are my tips and predictions for round 24. All right, round 24 gets underway on Thursday night, and what a way to start the week. The 4th place Panthers taking on the 2nd place Melbourne Storm. All right, starting first with the Panthers, who delivered a dominant performance, defeating the Newcastle Knights 48-12 at McDonald Jones Stadium. The Panthers surged to a commanding 26-0 lead by halftime, with early tries from Luke Garner, Lindsay Smith, and Liam Henry setting the tone for the match. Newcastle struggled defensively in the first half and only found rhythm after the break, while the Panthers' relentless attack saw them score 6 tries before the Knights managed their first points. The win marked Penrith's 9th in a row and sets them up perfectly for an unlikely top 4 finish. And as for the Storm, their dominance on a Thursday night and against the Brisbane Broncos continued with a 22-2 win to kick off round 23. The Storm dominated possession with 55% and racked up 5 line breaks to none, with Ryan Pappenhausen leading the way with a try, 5 tackle breaks, and 223 run meters after an uncharacteristically poor showing the week prior against the Eels. Despite the 20-point win, it still wasn't that pretty from the Storm, who finished the game with just a 72% completion rate and double-digit errors, but once again did enough to continue their charge towards September. All right, looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Panthers, they have won 6 of the last 10 against the Storm, but Melbourne have won 3 of the past 4. That does include a 30-26-point win in round 3 this season. And a really tough game to tip on Thursdays, as they tend to. But I am going to take the Panthers here by 1 to 12 points. I know they are probably due a loss, having won 9 straight. But I think this is a really important game for them to, get that one back from Melbourne earlier this season and really set the tone for what could be a historic finals campaign again. I do think it's close, though. It could be, a field goal in it. But for mine, I think the Panthers get it done by 1 to 12 points. All right, moving now to the first of 2 games on Friday night this week, and we do start with the 5th placed Warriors taking on the 11th placed St. George Illawarra Dragons over here in Auckland at Go Media Stadium. All right, and if we do start first with the Warriors, who suffered a 32-14 point defeat to the Canterbury Bulldogs at Accor Stadium, marking their 3rd consecutive loss and putting their top 4 hopes in jeopardy, slipping to 5th on the ladder. Heavy rain and slippery conditions played a significant role, but the Bulldogs dominated territory through superior tactics and kicking, led by Matt Burton's influential long kicking game. Injuries and reshuffles certainly hampered the Warriors, with playmaker Tamari Martin ruled out early with concussion and Leka Halasima spending time off with an HIA, weakening their structure and limiting creative options on attack, only scoring the 2 tries and unfortunately having 0 line breaks. And as for the Dragons, they defeated the Cronulla Sharks 22 points to 14 at Jubilee Stadium, snapping a 10-game losing streak to their arch rivals and claiming a very memorable derby win. The Dragons' defence stood firm in the second half, repelling multiple Sharks raids with key try-saving tackles. Briton Nickera was sin bin late in that game as ill discipline hampered the Sharks' comeback hopes. Despite being without key players through injuries and suspension, the Dragons' young squad, led by an energetic Clint Gutherson and a determined forward pack performance, controlled possession and territory while completing at nearly 90% for the match to seal the crucial win. Alright, and looking at the two sides head to head, the Warriors have won 3 of the last 4 against the Dragons and have also won 3 straight against the Saints at Go Media Stadium. And I am going to back my team here, the Warriors, by 1-12. I certainly think the Dragons are, a massive chance. They've certainly found form at the wrong end of the season, and I think they are still mathematically a chance to make the 8. So I'm certainly not expecting them to roll over here on some kind of holiday. It's going to be a tough game. Really, really interesting matchup here, but I am going to back my home side here by 1-12 points. Alright, and the final game on Friday night has the 9th placed Roosters looking to take down the 3rd placed Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs at Allianz Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Roosters, who delivered a commanding performance, beating the Dolphins 64-12 at Suncorp Stadium to keep their finals hopes alive, and in the process handing the Dolphins their largest loss in their club's history. The Roosters scored 11 tries to 2 with wingers Nwanganita Wase and Daniel Tupou combining for 5 tries and 388 run meters, while Sam Walker extended his goal-kicking streak to 27 successful conversions before finally missing one late in the game. 4 players were sent to the sin bin in an explosive first half, but the Roosters' clinical execution saw them join the Dolphins on 26 competition points and dramatically improve their for and against heading into the final rounds. And as for the Bulldogs, they delivered a strong performance against the New Zealand Warriors at a wet Accor Stadium, securing a convincing 32-14 point win. The Bulldogs dominated from the start, leading 20 points to 2 at halftime through a tactical kicking game and strong set completions in wet conditions, highlighted by Matt Burton's exceptional kicking, including a ridiculous 40-20. Burton was instrumental with 379 kick meters and was central to the Bulldogs' success, controlling the game's tempo with his long and short kicking game, combining perfectly with half Lockie Galvin to keep the Warriors pinned deep in their end for much of the match. The win solidified the Bulldogs' position in the top 4 and sets them up for a blockbuster clash this week against the Chooks. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Roosters, they have won 3 of the last 5 against the Dogs. However, Canterbury took down the Roosters earlier this season, 24 points to 20. I do like the Bulldogs here. You've got a cracking matchup, right? You've got the Dogs' resilient defence up against the ridiculous point-scoring, high-octane Roosters. But ultimately, I do think the Bulldogs' defence, it gets them across the line. I think it should be a cracking game. Big things at stake for both sides. But for me, Canterbury defend their way to a win by 1-12 points. Alright, moving now to the first of 3 games on your Super Saturday, and we do start with the 7th placed Cronulla Sharks taking on the last placed Gold Coast Titans at Shark Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Sharks, who had their 10-game winning streak snapped, losing to the St. George Illawarra Dragons 22 points to 14 at Jubilee Stadium. Cronulla made costly errors and showed poor discipline, including a late sin bin from Briton Nickera, which scrubbed out any chance of a late comeback in a tough local derby. Teague Wilkins celebrated his 100th game for the Sharks, but the team could only manage a 63% completion rate overall, coming up with 15 errors to the Dragons' 6. The Sharks struggled to maintain possession and discipline under pressure, ultimately getting out-enthused by the Saints, despite what was at stake for them. And as for the Gold Coast Titans, they fought a close contest against the South Sydney Rabbitohs at Cbus Super Stadium, ultimately falling narrowly short 18 points to 20. The Titans had the better of possession with 54% of the ball and dominated in tackle breaks with 27 compared to the Rabbitohs' 8, but just weren't able to convert it into points, instead ruining missed chances like Jaden Campbell's right under the sticks in the opening 10 minutes. The loss all but guarantees the Titans the wooden spoon in 2025, with the Bunnies still having their final bye of the season to come. Alright, looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Sharks, they have won 10 of the last 11 against the Titans. And I do think on the back of their loss to the Dragons last week, they come out absolutely firing. The Titans' grand final was last week against the Rabbitohs and they couldn't get across the line. So I am going to take the Sharks here, 13+. Alright, moving now to the second game on Saturday. We do have a Battle of Brisbane with the 6th place Broncos taking on the 8th place Dolphins at Suncorp Stadium. Alright, if we do start first with the Broncos, they endured a tough night against the Storm at Amy Park, failing to register a single try as the Storm dominated proceedings 22 points to 2. Brisbane looked right up for that contest early and was showing plenty of ticker before one play changed the course of the match and most likely their season. Adam Reynolds and Ezra Mann both succumbed to hamstring injuries in the 20th minute on the very same play. Things went from bad to worse for the Broncos when Selwyn Cobbo also left the field with a hamstring injury, marking a dark day for the club and their chances of a top 4 finish. To the Broncos' credit though, they never gave up and continued to fight but just couldn't get their attack going without their halves. And I know the Broncos do have Ben Hunt to take the reins, but losing those 3 players will leave a massive hole for the rest of the season. And as for the Dolphins, they were battered by the Sydney Roosters, suffering a resounding 64 to 12 point defeat, marking their biggest defeat in their 3 years in the competition. There really isn't too much to say about a performance like that. They clearly missed the kick and caved as pressure built and were unable to control their emotions like the Roosters, and I'm certainly expecting a big response this week. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Broncos, they have won 4 of the last 5 battles of Brisbane. That includes one earlier this season. And for mine, I do like the Dolphins here. I'm going to take the Dolphins by 1 to 12 points. I do think without Mann, Reynolds and Cobbo, the Broncos I don't think they can overcome it. They were struggling to get their best footy on with those players in the side, and I just think they will struggle. The Dolphins obviously will want to show something after a very, very embarrassing week last week, so I think they can get it done, but just by 1 to 12 points. Alright, and the final game on Super Saturday has the 16th placed South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the 14th placed Parramatta Eels at Allianz Stadium. Alright, if we start first with the Rabbitohs, who secured a gritty 20 to 18 point victory at Cbus Super Stadium, holding on to a narrow 2-point lead in the final 12 minutes to win away from home. Latrell Mitchell, who returned from injury at centre, was instrumental with 2 crucial try assists to Alex Johnston, who scored twice, marking Johnston's 208th and 209th career tries. South Sydney's defence was resolute under pressure late in that match, repelling multiple near tries by Titans Jojo Fafita in the dying minutes to maintain their lead and secure victory and almost ensure they won't win the wooden spoon in 2025. And as for the Eels, they secured a close 19-18 victory over the North Queensland Cowboys at CommBank Stadium, marking just their 7th win of the season. Joash Papali led the Eels with a standout 183 run meters, supported by Zach Lomax's strong showing, with the Eels having 8 players surpassing over 120 run meters. Mitchell Moses slotted a clutch field goal to give Parramatta the lead, and while they certainly did their best to bottle it in the end in the dying stages, the Bunkers' decision to rule no try on a Cowboys effort by Jake Clifford due to interference was correct, and they managed to hang on, certainly no thanks to Talon De Silva. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, South Sydney, they have won 8 of the last 9 meetings, but I do like the Eels in this one. I think the kicking game of Mitchell Moses will be the difference. The Bunnies are just a basket case of injuries. Even if Latrell's back, I think he'll need to step up and do a lot more of the kicking, but ultimately I do think the Eels can get it done. Alright, moving now to the first of 2 games on Sunday, and we do start with the 12th placed West Tigers taking on the 10th placed Manly Sea Eagles at Allianz Stadium as well. Alright, starting first with the Tigers, who had the bye last week, but the week prior delivered a spirited and clinical performance to upset the 3rd placed Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs 28 points to 14 in wet conditions at CommBank Stadium, ending a streak of losses against top 4 teams and providing a significant morale boost for coach Benji Marshall's squad. Key playmaker Adam Dewey was starting at halfback and starred with 161 run meters, 6 tackle breaks, a try assist, and 12 points from the boot, orchestrating a first half blitz to put the Tigers ahead 20-0 before half time. Despite losing Alex Seyfarth to the sin bin and Taylor May to a head injury assessment in the second 40, the Tigers maintained composure, with Jerome Luai setting up the match-sealing try for Samuel Afanu in the 70th minute to lock in the victory. And as for the Sea Eagles, they fell 28-12 to the Canberra Raiders at GIO Stadium despite owning the scoring with a breathtaking length of the field try to Tom Trbojevic in the 3rd minute. Momentum initially swung Manly's way, with Tolu Kola playing a key role early, setting up the first try and then scoring himself just after half-time to give the Sea Eagles a brief 12-10 lead. Manly struggled to convert possession and attacking territory into points, failing to score during a crucial period with a one-man advantage, while the Raiders' resolute defence repeatedly denied the Sea Eagles, especially late in both halves. The loss leaves the club fighting for a slim chance of playing finals football this season. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, Manly have won 8 of the past 10 meetings, including a 26-10 win earlier this season. This will, however, be the first time they've met at Allianz Stadium. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the Tigers off the back of a bye here by 1 to 12 points. I don't trust Manly as far as I could throw them, and why not? Tigers 1 to 12. Alright, and the final game of round 24 has the 14th placed Cowboys taking on the 15th placed Newcastle Knights at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Now, if we start first with the Cowboys, who narrowly lost to the Parramatta Eels 19-18 at CommBank Stadium to close out round 23. The match was a tight contest decided in the final moments by a field goal from Parramatta's Mitchell Moses, which clinched the win for the Eels just minutes after the Cowboys had levelled the score at 18-all. The Cowboys were strongly led once again by captain Tom Dearden, with strong performances also from forwards Jason Taumalolo, Reece Robson and Cohen Hess, and although they played with a more steely resolve, it still wasn't enough to get them home, despite a try in the final moments being scrubbed out by the bunker for obstruction. And as for the Knights, they suffered a heavy 48-12 point defeat against the Penrith Panthers at home at McDonald-Jones Stadium. Penrith dominated from the outset, racing to a 26-0 halftime lead and finishing with 9 tries to the Knights' 2, showcasing their attacking depth despite the wet conditions. Newcastle's only tries came in that second half via Matt Croker and Jermaine McEwen, but it was not enough to overcome Penrith's clinical execution and relentless grinding style of play. The defeat exposed once again the lack of attacking threats for the Knights, as well as their defensive frailties. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Cowboys, they have won 5 of the last 6 meetings. The Knights, they have also never beaten the Cowboys at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, and I don't think they do again. I am going to take the Cowboys here by 1 to 12 points. You've got the worst attack in the comp up against the worst defense. I mean, what a way to end the week. But I do think the Cowboys at home do get back on the horse. See what I did there? And beat the Knights by 1 to 12 points. Bada bing, bada boom, just like that, we're done for another week. Only a few more to go, team. Thanks for sticking with me. Leave your tips in the comments down below, and I will see you next week.